Rachel Martinez's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She stood in the security line at Colorado Springs Airport, watching a young Air Force officer in dress blues move through the TSA checkpoint with easy confidence. His uniform was crisp, his posture perfect, his stride purposeful. 6 months ago, that had been her. Major Rachel Hawk Martinez, decorated A-10 Thunderbolt II pilot, the woman who'd flown 522 combat missions and earned 3 distinguished flying crosses. Now she was just another face in the crowd, wearing civilian clothes that felt like a costume, clutching a boarding pass with sweaty palms. The TSA agent barely glanced at her ID. "Remove your shoes, laptop out, liquids in a bin." Rachel nodded, not trusting her voice. She'd commanded squadrons, coordinated multi-aircraft strikes under enemy fire, talked dying pilots through emergency landings. But right now, the simple act of placing her carry-on on the conveyor belt felt like lifting a mountain. The scanner beeped. Rachel froze. "Ma'am, step through again, please," the agent said, bored. She did another beep. Her heart hammered. "Get it together, it's just a metal detector." "Empty your pockets, please." Rachel's fingers found the challenge coin in her jacket pocket, the one Sarah Chen had given her the night before their last mission together. She placed it in the bin, watched it roll through the X-ray machine. For a moment, she wanted to grab it and run. Run from the airport, the flight, the memories that followed her like ghosts. But she didn't run, she never had. "You're clear, ma'am, have a nice flight." Have a nice flight, as if flying could ever be nice again. Gate C7 was crowded with the usual mix of travelers. Businessmen typing frantically on laptops, families wrangling excited children, a teenage couple stealing kisses by the window. Rachel found an empty seat in the corner as far from the windows and the view of the tarmac as possible. She pulled out her phone. 3 missed calls from her therapist, Dr. Sarah Brennan. 1 text message, "Rachel, please call me before you board. We should talk about this." Rachel deleted the message. Dr. Brennan meant well, but she didn't understand. No one who hadn't been in the cockpit could understand what it meant to fly, to fight, to lose someone at 20,000 feet with nothing but static on the radio. United Flight 2847 to Washington Dulles will begin boarding in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Rachel closed her eyes and was immediately transported back to that day, March 17, 2024. The sky had been perfectly blue over Afghanistan, the kind of blue that made you believe in heaven. "Hawk, I've got eyes on the target compound. 3 buildings, heavy fortifications. Intel says there's a high-value target inside." Sarah Chen's voice had been steady, professional. They'd flown together for 3 years, watched each other's backs through countless missions. Sarah was more than a wingman, she was a sister. "Copy that, Viper 2, moving into position for gun run, watch for ground fire." The A-10 Warthog was an ugly beast, all angles and armor, built around the massive GAU-8 Avenger rotary cannon that could shred tanks like tissue paper. But in Rachel's hands, it was a precision instrument. She'd lined up the target, her finger on the trigger, when Sarah's voice had cut through the radio, "Urgent now." "Hawk Sam launch, 6 o'clock, break left, break left." Rachel had broken hard, pulled 9 Gs that made her vision tunnel. The surface-to-air missile had missed her by 20 feet, but Sarah, maneuvering to cover Rachel's escape, had flown right into the kill zone. The explosion had lit up the sky like a second sun. Sarah, respond, Viper 2 come in." Nothing, just the hiss of static and the sight of debris tumbling toward the Afghan mountains below. Rachel had somehow gotten her damaged A-10 home, landed with hydraulic fluid streaming from both wings and one engine completely dead. The ground crew had called it a miracle. The Air Force had called her a hero, given her a medal. Rachel called it the day she stopped being able to fly. Now boarding all passengers for United Flight 2847. Rachel stood on legs that felt like water. Around her, people gathered their bags, checked their boarding passes, moved toward the gate with casual ease. The businessman from the security line brushed past her, already on his phone discussing quarterly earnings. A young mother juggled a toddler and a diaper bag, exhausted but determined. Normal people, living normal lives, going on normal flights where the biggest worry was whether the Wi-Fi would work. Rachel envied them more than they could possibly know. She was the last to board. The flight attendant, blonde, probably late 20s, name tag reading Jessica, gave her a practice smile. "Welcome aboard, seat 12A, right side, about halfway back." The cabin smelled like recycled air and instant coffee. Rachel moved down the aisle, hyper-aware of every sound. The overhead bins slamming shut, the hydraulic whine of the jet bridge disconnecting, the muffled roar of auxiliary power. Seat 12A, window seat, of course. She slid in, immediately closed the window shade. The businessman in 12B was already asleep, his briefcase stowed beneath the seat, his phone in his lap showing a screensaver of 2 kids and a golden retriever. Normal, safe, unaware. Rachel's therapist had been clear. Avoidance isn't healing, Rachel. Eventually, you have to face what happened. But not today, please, not today. The intercom crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Stevens. We've been cleared for departure. Flight time to Washington Dulles will be approximately 3 hours and 40 minutes. Weather looks good, should be a smooth ride. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight." Enjoy the flight. Rachel fastened her seatbelt with practiced precision, tight enough to hold, loose enough to release quickly if needed. Old habits, combat habits, habits that whispered she'd never really left the war. The engine spooled up. The aircraft began to push back from the gate. Through the closed window shade, Rachel could see light and shadow shifting. She gripped the armrests, her knuckles white, and began the breathing exercise Dr. Brennan had taught her. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. The businessman beside her stirred, noticed her death grip. Nervous flyer. Rachel managed a tight smile, something like that. "You have no idea," she thought. "You're sitting next to a woman who's flown through hell and come back broken. A woman who once controlled death from the sky but now can't even sit in a commercial aircraft without falling apart." The engines reached full power. The brakes released. United Flight 2847 began rolling down the runway, gathering speed. 80 tons of metal and fuel and fragile human bodies hurtling toward flight. Rachel closed her eyes and whispered the prayer, "Not today, please, not today." The nose lifted, the wheels left the ground. And Rachel Martinez, who'd sworn she'd never fly again, was airborne. What she didn't know, what none of the 147 souls aboard could possibly know, was that in exactly 43 minutes, Captain Stevens would drop his coffee cup. In 44 minutes, every warning light in the cockpit would turn red. In 46 minutes, F-16 fighter jets would scramble from Offutt Air Force Base. And in 47 minutes, Rachel Martinez would have to become Hawk again. Or everyone on this plane would die. First Officer James Kowalski had dreamed of this moment his entire life. At 26, with 847 flight hours and a brand new commercial pilot's license, he was finally living the dream. Not flying cargo or instructing students, but right here, in the right seat of a Boeing 737, wearing the navy blue uniform with gold stripes, responsible for 147 lives. "Beautiful day for flying," Captain Richard Stevens said, his voice carrying the easy confidence of 30 years and 18,000 flight hours. He was 58, with silver hair and laugh lines around his eyes, the kind of captain every first officer hoped to learn from. "You ever fly over the Rockies before, James?" "A few times during training, sir. Never gets old." Stevens chuckled, adjusting the autopilot settings. "Wait until you've done it 10,000 times. Then you'll appreciate a good cup of coffee more than the view." He reached for his thermos, the one with "World's Best Grandpa" printed on the side. His daughter had given it to him for his birthday. The cockpit was peaceful, autopilot engaged, weather clear, all systems green. At 35,000 feet, United 2847 sliced through crystalline air, the Rocky Mountains sprawling below like a wrinkled blanket. James was reviewing the approach procedures for dulls when he heard it, a soft metallic clink. Captain Stevens' thermos hit the floor. James glanced over. "Captain, you dropped." The words died in his throat. Stevens' face had gone slack on the left side, his mouth drooping open. His eyes rolled back, showing white. His right hand clawed at his chest, then went limp. "Captain," James' voice pitched high. "Captain Stevens." Stevens slumped forward. His weight pushed the yoke down. The nose dropped. The autopilot disengaged with a harsh, angry beep. Warning chimes cascaded through the cockpit. "Autopilot disconnect. Autopilot disconnect." The aircraft tilted into a dive. In the cabin, passengers screamed. A drink cart rolled backwards. The flight attendant, Jessica, grabbed a seatback to keep from falling. James seized the yoke with both hands, pulling back hard. His training screamed through his mind, "Don't overcorrect. Smooth inputs. Check your instruments." But his training had never covered this. The aircraft leveled out, but Stevens was still slumped over his controls, dead weight pressing buttons, his knee against the rudder pedal. James reached across, trying to pull him back. "Captain, can you hear me? Captain Stevens." Nothing. Stevens' breathing was labored, raspy. Foam appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Stroke, oh God, he's having a stroke." James' hand slammed the call button. "Flight attendant to the cockpit. Medical emergency, now." In seat 12A, Rachel's eyes snapped open. That wasn't turbulence. She'd felt turbulence in everything from Cessnas to C-130s. That was a human error correction, someone overcorrecting a dive, pulling back too hard on the yoke. Her combat instincts fired like lightning. Something was wrong in the cockpit. The businessman in 12B woke up, startled. What was that? "Probably nothing," Rachel lied, her voice automatic and calm even as her mind raced. She pressed her face to the window shade, opening it a crack. The wing was level now, but she'd felt the bank angle, steep, too steep. Around her, passengers were murmuring nervously. The young mother across the aisle clutched her toddler tighter. An elderly man, too, rose back, crossed himself, and started praying in Spanish. The intercom clicked on. Jessica's voice came through, trying for calm but not quite succeeding. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some minor technical difficulties. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Everything is under control." Rachel had heard that tone before, in the voices of pilots who were absolutely not in control but couldn't afford to admit it. Her heart rate slowed, her breathing steadied. The fear from earlier evaporated, replaced by something she'd thought she'd lost forever. "Purpose." In the cockpit, Jessica burst through the door, took one look at Captain Stevens, and went pale. "Oh my God, is he? Stroke or heart attack, I don't know." James was fighting to keep his voice steady while simultaneously trying to push Stevens back into his seat. "Help me move him. I need to fly this plane." Together they wrestled Stevens' limp body back. Jessica checked his pulse. "He's alive, but his breathing is wrong. I'll get the AED and oxygen." "Do it fast." James was alone now, staring at instruments that suddenly looked foreign. His hands trembled on the yoke. Below them, the Kansas plain stretched endlessly, flat, brown, empty. He keyed the radio. "Denver Center, United 2847. Mayday, mayday, mayday." The response came back immediately, professional and calm. "United 2847, Denver Center. Go ahead with your emergency." "Denver, we have a medical emergency. Captain is incapacitated. Possible stroke. First officer assuming command. Request priority landing at nearest suitable airport. There was a pause, just a heartbeat, but James heard it. The controller was processing what this meant. A first officer, barely 6 months out of training, suddenly in command of a transcontinental flight. United 2847, copy your emergency. Squawk 7700. We're clearing you direct to Offutt Air Force Base, Omaha, Nebraska. Turn left heading 75. Distance 180 miles. Emergency equipment will be standing by. Left to 75, direct Offutt. James' hands moved on autopilot, inputting the heading, but then he saw something that made his blood turn to ice. A red light on the hydraulic panel. Then another. And another. No. Denver Center, his voice cracked. We have hydraulic failures, multiple systems showing red, primary and backup. Jessica was back, kneeling beside Stevens with the AED. She looked up at James' words, her face draining of color. Even she knew what that meant. United 2847 understood. What's your fuel state and souls on board? We have 12,000 pounds of fuel and James had to check the manifest. 147 souls aboard. 147 people. 147 lives. And he had maybe 30% control authority without hydraulics. He'd never trained for this. Nobody trained for this in their first 6 months. The radio crackled. United 2847, be advised we're scrambling military aircraft to escort. They'll talk you through procedures. Stay calm, son. You've got this. But James didn't have this. His vision was tunneling. His breathing was coming in short gasps. The yoke felt like it was made of lead, fighting every input. Outside the cockpit door, passengers were getting restless. A man 3 rows back unbuckled his seatbelt and started toward the front. What's going on? Why are we turning around? Jessica rushed out. Sir, please return to your seat immediately. I demand to know what's happening. Through the thin cockpit door, James heard the commotion, heard the fear spreading through the cabin like wildfire. He tried to focus on the instruments, but they were swimming before his eyes. I can't do this. I'm going to kill everyone on this plane. The hydraulic panel lit up like a Christmas tree, red lights cascading one after another. The backup system wasn't responding. The control surfaces were sluggish, barely moving when he commanded them. James keyed the radio again, and this time his voice broke completely. Denver Center, I don't know how to land this aircraft without hydraulics. They didn't teach us this. I only have 800 hours. I need. What did he need? A miracle, divine intervention. United 2847, help is coming. Military fighters are launching now. They'll. Another alarm. This one made James' stomach drop. Terrain, pull up. They were descending. Without proper hydraulic pressure, he couldn't maintain altitude efficiently. He pulled back on the yoke. It barely responded. The nose came up maybe 5 degrees when he needed 15. In the cabin, oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling with a collective gasp of terror. Children screamed. Adults grabbed for the masks, fumbling with shaking hands. Rachel Martinez didn't grab her mask. She was watching the wings through her window, nodding the control surfaces barely moving, seeing the hydraulic fluid. She was sure of it, streaming from somewhere near the wing root. This wasn't a minor problem. This was catastrophic. The businessman beside her was hyperventilating into his oxygen mask. We're going to die. Oh God, we're going to die. Rachel turned to him, her voice cutting through his panic with surgical precision. No, we're not. Now put your mask on properly, over your nose and mouth, and breathe normally. Something in her tone made him obey instantly. Rachel pressed the call button. The chime was lost in the chaos, but she kept her finger on it, holding it down. Jessica appeared, her face pale but professional. Ma'am, please stay seated. I'm Major Rachel Martinez, United States Air Force, retired. I'm an A-10 pilot with 522 combat missions. Rachel's voice was steel wrapped in calm. What's happening in that cockpit? Jessica hesitated only a moment. Captain's had a stroke. First officer is alone. Hydraulics are failing. Is he military trained? I don't think so. Rachel unbuckled her seatbelt and stood. Take me to him now. Ma'am, I can't just. That first officer is about to panic, and when he panics, we all die. Rachel locked eyes with the flight attendant. I've landed aircraft with worse failures than this. I can help, but only if you take me to that cockpit right now. Jessica saw something in Rachel's eyes, something hard and competent and utterly unafraid. She nodded. As Rachel moved toward the cockpit, the teenager near the front whispered to his father, "Dad, is that lady going to save us?" His father, watching this ordinary-looking woman stride forward with the confidence of a general, squeezed his son's hand. "I think she might, son. I really think she might." In the cockpit, James Kowalski stared at the cascading failures, at the ground slowly rising to meet them, at the radio filled with urgent voices. He was 26 years old, alone, and completely out of his depth. His hand moved toward the radio to tell Denver Center they weren't going to make it. That's when the cockpit door opened behind him. Captain Lisa Viper Chen was in the middle of a push-up when the alert klaxon wailed. She dropped from plank position, grabbed her flight suit from the locker, and was dressed in 17 seconds, a personal record. Around her in the ready room at Offutt Air Force Base, 3 other pilots scrambled, but Commander Price pointed directly at her. "Viper, you're up. Civilian 737 in distress. Hydraulic failure, captain incapacitated, rookie first officer." Lisa's blood went cold. How rookie? 6 months out of flight school, 800 hours. Christ! She was already running toward the hangar, her crew chief sprinting beside her. "He won't know how to land without hydraulics. That's not civilian training." "That's why you're going up there. Talk him down." Her F-16 Fighting Falcon sat gleaming under the hangar lights, $30 million of American air superiority, capable of Mach 2 and armed with enough missiles to level a small city. But today, it wasn't a weapon. Today, it was a guardian angel. "Lieutenant Webb," Commander Price's voice echoed across the tarmac. "Your wingman, move your ass." "Lieutenant Marcus Stitch." Webb appeared at a dead run, still zipping his flight suit. At 28, he was the youngest pilot in the squadron, but had the steadiest hands Lisa had ever seen. She'd flown with him over the Persian Gulf, watched him thread a refueling boom in 40-knot crosswinds without breaking a sweat. "Sir, what's the situation?" "Civilian bird is dying in the sky. You and Viper are going to make sure it doesn't." They reached their aircraft simultaneously. Crew chiefs were already pulling chocks, running pre-flight checks at double speed. Lisa climbed the ladder to her cockpit, settled into the ejection seat, and began the start sequence. Her hands moved with muscle memory: master arm, fuel pumps, engine start. The Pratt & Whitney F-100 turbofan engine came to life, with a shriek that could wake the dead. "Viper, you're cleared for immediate departure, runway 30, the tower controller said. "Civilian aircraft is at your 2 o'clock, 80 miles, descending through 28,000 feet, squawking 7,700. The Universal Emergency Code." "Copy tower. Viper's rolling." Lisa released the brakes and shoved the throttle forward. The F-16 leaped forward like a racehorse from the gate. Beside her, Stitch's jet rolled in perfect formation. They were airborne in 2,000 feet. Lisa pulled the stick back and the earth fell away. She went to afterburner. A cone of flame erupted from her tailpipe as the F-16 accelerated past 600 knots. The G-forces pressed her back into the seat. At this speed, they'd intercept the 737 in less than 4 minutes. "Stitch, formation on me. We're coming up fast." Copy Viper, right behind you. Lisa's radar picked up the 737's transponder. She switched to the emergency frequency. United 2847, this is Air Force Viper, approaching from your 6 o'clock. Do you copy? The voice that came back was young, male, and barely holding together. Viper, this is United 2847. First Officer Kowalski. God, I'm so glad you're here. James, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I'm going to position off your left wing. You're going to see me and I need you not to panic. I'm here to help. Understood? Understood. But his voice said otherwise. It said, I'm drowning and I don't know how to swim. Lisa pulled alongside the Boeing 737, stitch positioning off the right wing. What she saw made her stomach clench. The aircraft was wallowing, nose bobbing up and down, wings seesawing slightly. The control surfaces, ailerons, elevators, rudder were barely moving. Hydraulic fluid, she was certain now, streamed from somewhere on the port wing, a fine mist catching the sunlight. Stitch, you seeing this? Affirmative, that bird is hurt bad. Lisa keyed the radio to James. Okay, James, talk to me. What systems do you have? The hydraulic panel is all red lights. Primary system failed, backup system not responding. I have maybe 30% control authority. The yoke is like moving concrete. 30%. That wasn't enough to land, not even close. Copy that. What's your fuel state? 11,500 pounds now. Maybe 90 minutes. And the captain? A pause, stroke, flight attendants working on him, but he can't help me. I'm alone up here. Lisa heard it in his voice. The edge of panic, the moment right before a pilot gives up. She'd seen it before in training, seen young pilots freeze when systems failed. She couldn't let that happen at 28,000 feet with 147 souls aboard. James, you are not alone. You have me, you have Lieutenant Webb, you have every controller from here to Washington. We're going to get you on the ground, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? I'll try. Don't try, do. Now, let's run through emergency procedures for hydraulic failure. For the next 8 minutes, Lisa talked James through every procedure she knew. Deploy the ram air turbine for emergency power. Try the manual reversion mode. Check the brake accumulator pressure. But with every procedure, the answer was the same. Negative, not responding, system failed. The 737 continued its slow, wallowing descent. At this rate, they'd be at 10,000 feet in 20 minutes. And landing required precision these systems couldn't provide. Viper, Stitch's voice cut in on the tactical frequency, private between the two F-16s. This isn't working. That kid doesn't have the training for a no-hydraulics landing. He's going to auger in. Lisa's jaw clenched. I know. So what do we do? That was the question, wasn't it? F-16 pilots were trained for combat, for air superiority, for blowing things out of the sky. They weren't trained to nurse a wounded commercial airliner to the ground. That required someone with different skills. Someone who'd landed damaged aircraft before. Someone who. Offutt Tower, this is Viper. Lisa's mind was racing. The first officer doesn't have the experience for this. We need someone up here who's landed aircraft with catastrophic failures. We need someone who's been through hell and knows how to. Viper, stand by. We're checking for available pilots in the area. There's no time. That bird is descending. We need. Viper, we have a situation development, the controller interrupted. Stand by on the emergency frequency. Lisa switched channels and heard a voice she didn't recognize, female, calm, with the kind of authority that came from actual combat, not simulation. Your control surfaces are barely responding because you've lost pressure in both hydraulic systems. You need to increase airspeed to maintain better control authority. Bring it up to 290 knots. James, who is this? This is Major Rachel Martinez, United States Air Force, retired. I'm in your cockpit now, son, and we're going to get through this together. Lisa's heart stopped. Martinez, Rachel Martinez. There was only one Hawk Martinez, the legend, the A-10 pilot who'd flown more combat missions than most pilots flew in their entire career. The woman who'd landed an aircraft so shot up that the ground crew couldn't believe she'd made it back alive. The woman who'd been Sarah's instructor, Sarah's mentor, Sarah's friend. Sarah. Lisa's hands tightened on the stick. Her younger sister, Lieutenant Sarah Chen, had been killed in action 8 months ago, flying an A-10, on a mission with her squadron commander. With Major Rachel Hawk Martinez. Stitch, Lisa's voice was tight, controlled. Did she just say her name was Martinez? Affirmative, Rachel Martinez, you know her. Did she know her? Lisa had spent 8 months trying to find the woman who'd been with Sarah when she died. The woman who'd somehow survived when Sarah hadn't. The woman who'd received medals while Sarah received a flag. Viper, you okay? Stitch's voice was concerned now. Lisa forced herself to breathe. Personal feelings didn't matter. Not at 25,000 feet with 147 lives at stake. She keyed the emergency frequency. Major Martinez, this is Captain Lisa Chen, call sign Viper, 388th Fighter Wing. I'm off your left wing in an F-16. There was a pause, then, Chen, what's your first name, Captain? Lisa. Another pause, longer this time. When Rachel's voice came back, it was different, strained, heavy with something Lisa couldn't quite identify. Any relation to Lieutenant Sarah Chen, 354th Fighter Squadron? Lisa's vision blurred. She blinked hard, forcing focus. She was my sister. The radio was silent for 3 heartbeats. Lisa could imagine Rachel in that cockpit, gripping the yoke, staring at instruments while the ghosts of the past came flooding back. Finally, Rachel's voice returned, and it was steel-wrapped in sorrow. Viper, Lisa, I couldn't save your sister, but I swear on her memory, on everything I am, I'm going to save this plane. Are you with me? Lisa looked at the wounded 737, at the hydraulic fluid streaming, at the control surfaces barely moving. She thought about Sarah's last letter. Hawk is the best pilot I've ever seen. If you're ever in trouble in the sky, you want her on your wing. Sarah had trusted Hawk Martinez with her life. Lisa would trust her with 147 others. Until the wheels touch down, Hawk. Lisa's voice was firm now, steady. Until the wheels touch down. Copy that, now let's. An alarm shrieked through the radio. James' voice panicked. We're losing altitude. The nose is dropping and I can't pull it up. Rachel, calm as ice. I've got it. Viper, Stitch, we need options and we need them now. Offutt's main runway won't work for us. Where else can we go? Lisa pulled up her kneeboard, scanning emergency airfields, and saw something. Hawk, there's an auxiliary runway at Offutt. Old sack runway from the Cold War, built for B-52 bombers. 11,500 feet, mostly unused but maintained. It's rated for heavy aircraft. Get it cleared, we're going there. Copy, but Hawk, Lisa hesitated. You're going to need more than just vectors and encouragement. You need visual guidance from someone who can fly slow enough to pace you. Someone who. Rachel finished her thought. Someone in an A-10. Exactly. Can you get one? Lisa switched to the military tactical frequency. Offutt Tower, this is Viper. I need an A-10 Warthog scrambled immediately. We need close air support, literally, for this approach. Viper checking. We have one A-10 pilot running training exercises at Fort Riley Range, 40 miles south. Call sign Warthog 1, Captain Derek Sullivan. Lisa smiled grimly. The A-10, the Thunderbolt II, the Warthog, the Hog, the ugly, slow, beloved tank killer that could fly low and slow and take a beating that would destroy any other aircraft. If anything could pace a crippled 737 and provide visual guidance, it was the Warthog. Get him here now. 6 minutes until the A-10 arrived. 6 minutes to get a plan together. 6 minutes to save 147 lives. Lisa looked at the wounded 737 and whispered the fighter pilot's prayer. God, don't let me fuck this up. Cockpit door opened, and First Officer James Kowalski turned to see a woman in her early 40s, medium height, athletic build, with steel-gray eyes that had seen things most people only had nightmares about. "Who are you?" James' voice was raw from stress. "You can't be in here." Rachel Martinez didn't answer immediately. Her eyes swept the cockpit with the precision of a combat pilot conducting a threat assessment. Hydraulic panel blazing red, altitude dropping, airspeed fluctuating, Captain Stevens secured in his seat but unconscious, and a young first officer on the edge of complete psychological collapse. She'd seen this before. Young pilots faced with the impossible, freezing at the controls. "My name is Major Rachel Martinez, United States Air Force, retired." Her voice cut through the cockpit alarms like a blade through silk. "Call sign, Hawk, A-10 Thunderbolt pilot, 522 combat missions. I've landed aircraft with no hydraulics, no engines, and holes you could drive a truck through. And today, I'm going to help you land this aircraft." James stared at her, his face pale and slick with sweat. You're a fighter pilot." "Attack pilot, close air support." Rachel moved to the jump seat behind the center console, her eyes never leaving the instruments. "The A-10 Warthog isn't pretty, but she's tough as hell. I've brought birds home that had no business flying. This 737 still has engines, partial controls, and 2 pilots. We can do this." "But I can't." Rachel placed a firm hand on his shoulder, forcing him to meet her eyes. "James Kowalski, look at me. You are not alone anymore. Do you understand? You did everything right up to this point. You declared an emergency, you kept the aircraft flying, you didn't give up. That took courage. Now I need you to trust me and do exactly what I say. Can you do that?" Something in her voice, not harsh, not soft, but absolutely certain, cut through James' panic. He nodded, unable to speak. "Good, now take a breath, nice and slow." James breathed. His hands stopped shaking quite so badly. Rachel leaned forward, studying the control inputs. "Show me what you've got. Give me a 5-degree bank left." James moved the yoke. The aircraft responded sluggishly, taking twice as long as normal to bank. Rachel watched the control surfaces through the side window, barely moving, fighting against James' commands. "Okay, now level out." James did. The aircraft wallowed back to wings level, but it took everything he had. "Good, you're doing fine. The aircraft is controllable, barely, but controllable. That's what we're working with." Rachel keyed the radio transmitter. "Air Force fighters, this is Major Rachel Martinez, call sign Hawk, speaking from the cockpit of United 2847. Who am I talking to?" The response came immediately. A woman's voice, professional but carrying an undercurrent Rachel couldn't quite place. "Hawk, this is Captain Lisa Chen, call sign Viper, in an F-16 off your left wing. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, call sign Stitch, is off your right." Rachel's hand froze on the transmit button. "Chen, Lisa Chen." Her mind flashed back 8 months. Afghanistan, the mission brief. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, bright-eyed and brilliant, one of the best young A-10 pilots Rachel had ever trained. Sarah had mentioned her older sister once, an F-16 pilot stationed stateside, someone Sarah looked up to. "My sister Lisa is the reason I joined the Air Force, ma'am. She's the real fighter pilot in the family. I just drive the slow bus." Rachel had laughed. The slow bus with a 30mm cannon that can destroy anything on the battlefield. Never underestimate the Warthog, Chen. That had been 3 days before the mission. 3 days before Sarah's aircraft exploded over the Afghan mountains. Rachel forced her voice to remain steady. "Viper, what's your first name?" Lisa. The cockpit seemed to shrink. Of all the pilots in the United States Air Force, of all the F-16 drivers who could have been scrambled today, it had to be Sarah's sister. The universe had a cruel sense of timing. Any relation to Lieutenant Sarah Chen, 354th Fighter Squadron? A pause, then tightly controlled. She was my sister. Was, past tense. Rachel closed her eyes for a moment. She'd carried Sarah's death like a stone in her chest for 8 months, had nightmares where she heard Sarah's last transmission on infinite loop, had attended the memorial service and stood in the back, unable to face Sarah's family because how could she? How could she explain that she'd survived when their daughter, their sister, hadn't? And now, at 24,000 feet with 147 lives depending on her, Rachel was face to face, radio to radio, with the woman who had every right to hate her. James was staring at her. "Major, you okay?" Rachel opened her eyes. Personal feelings could wait, had to wait. She keyed the radio. "Viper, Lisa. I was Sarah's squadron commander. I was on that mission." Her voice was steady despite the storm inside. "I couldn't save your sister. The SAM came too fast. She maneuvered to cover me and I've replayed that moment 1,000 times, wishing I could change it, wishing it had been me instead." The radio was silent. Rachel could imagine Lisa in her F-16 cockpit, knuckles white on the stick, deciding whether to help or to tell Rachel exactly what she thought of the woman who'd lived while Sarah died. When Lisa's voice came back, it wasn't what Rachel expected. "My sister's last letter to me," she said. "Hawk is the best pilot I've ever seen. If you're ever in trouble in the sky, Lisa, you want her on your wing. She saved more lives than anyone I know." And then she wrote, "If anything happens to me, don't blame Hawk. We both know the risks. We both chose this." Rachel's throat tightened. She hadn't known about that letter. Lisa continued, her voice stronger now. "Sarah trusted you with her life, Hawk. Today, I'm trusting you with 147 others. We can deal with the past later. Right now, let's honor my sister by doing what she'd want, saving every soul on that aircraft. Are you with me?" Rachel felt something shift inside her chest. Not healing, not yet, but perhaps the first crack in the wall she'd built around her grief. "Until the wheels touch down, Viper. Until the wheels touch down." James cleared his throat. "I hate to interrupt, but we're at 22,000 feet now and still descending. What's the plan?" Rachel switched back to mission mode. "Viper Stitch, what are our options for landing?" "Lisa, Offutt's main runway is only 9,000 feet. With your approach speed and no thrust reversers working properly, you'll overshoot. Then we need the auxiliary runway, the old Strategic Air Command Strip. Already requested clearance. They're foaming it now. But Hawk, that approach is steep. You'll need precise altitude control and without hydraulics." "I know, which is why I need more than just vectors and encouragement." Rachel's mind was working through the problem at fighter pilot speed. "I need someone who can fly slow enough to pace us, someone who can provide real-time visual guidance, see things we can't see from inside this cockpit, someone in an aircraft designed for low and slow operations." She could hear the smile in Lisa's voice. "You need an A-10. The Warthog is perfect for this. Can you get one?" "Already done. Captain Derek Sullivan, call sign Warthog 1, is inbound from Fort Riley, 6 minutes out." Rachel allowed herself a tight smile. The A-10, her aircraft, the ugly, beloved Warthog that had carried her through 522 missions and brought her home when she had no right to survive. If anything could pace a crippled 737 and talk them down, it was the Hog. "Good. In the meantime, James, I need you to maintain 280 knots. That'll give us better control authority." James pushed the throttles forward slightly. The engines responded, airspeed increasing. The controls felt marginally better, not good but better. Rachel studied the approach path on the navigation display. "Viper, what's the weather at Offutt?" clearing but unstable. Wind shear reported at 500 feet, gusting to 45 knots. There's a window, but it's narrow. Maybe 20 minutes before conditions deteriorate. 20 minutes. They were 120 miles out. At their current speed and descent rate, they'd arrive right at the edge of that window. No room for error. No second chances. Copy that, we'll take it. James looked at her with wide eyes. Major, I've never landed in wind shear like that. You won't be, I will. Rachel's voice was gentle but firm. When we get to final approach, I'm taking the controls. You're going to help me, your hands on the yoke with mine, adding strength when I need it. But I'll be flying this aircraft. Understand? Yes, ma'am. A new voice crackled over the radio, younger, excited despite the gravity. United 2847, this is Warthog 1. I understand you've got a hawk in the nest who needs some close air support. Consider me your wingman, ma'am. It's an honor. Rachel felt a surge of emotion she hadn't expected. Pilots, brothers and sisters of the sky. When one fell, others rose to catch them. Warthog 1, this is Hawk. Your timing is perfect. Let's show these fighter jocks how slow and low gets the job done. Lisa's voice came back dry. We heard that, Hawk. You were meant to. And for just a moment, despite the crisis, despite the 147 lives at stake, despite everything, Rachel Martinez smiled. She was flying again. Not in an A-10, not in combat, but flying nonetheless. And this time she wouldn't lose anyone. All aircraft, this is Hawk. Here's the plan. Captain Derek Boomer Sullivan was having the best day of his life, right up until the moment it became the most terrifying. At 29, with sandy hair and a grin that had gotten him out of more trouble than into it, Boomer had spent the morning doing what he loved most, flying low and fast over the Kansas prairie in an A-10 Thunderbolt II, practicing close air support runs on simulated ground targets. The A-10 wasn't graceful. It wasn't sleek like an F-16 or intimidating like an F-22. It looked like someone had built an aircraft around a giant cannon, which was exactly what they'd done. The GAU-8 Avenger rotary cannon was so massive that the entire aircraft had to be designed around it. Ugly, absolutely, deadly, without question. And Boomer loved every rivet of his Warthog. Warthog 1, this is off at control. Emergency scramble. Vector heading 340 maximum speed. You're needed for civilian aircraft assistance. Boomer banked hard north. Copy Offutt, what kind of assistance? Close air support, ground attack. Negative. Landing assistance for a Boeing 737 with hydraulic failure. The pilot coordinating is Major Rachel Martinez. Boomer's hands went slack on the stick for a heartbeat. The A-10 dipped 100 feet before he caught it. Say again, Offutt. Did you say Hawk Martinez? Affirmative, you know her. Know her? Major Rachel Hawk Martinez was the reason Boomer wore Air Force wings. 6 years ago, she'd been his instructor at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona, teaching him everything about flying the A-10. She was tough, demanding, and absolutely brilliant. She'd washed out 3 pilots in his class for lack of discipline, but she'd taken Boomer under her wing when he struggled with weapons delivery. You've got the hands, Sullivan, she'd told him after a particularly rough training flight. Now you need the head. The Warthog isn't about speed or flash. It's about patience, precision, and being exactly where your troops need you when they need you. Master that and you'll save lives. He'd carried those words through every mission since. Offutt, I'm pushing to max speed. ETA 4 minutes. The twin turbofan engine screamed as Boomer coaxed every knot out of the Warthog. The A-10's maximum speed was only 380 knots, slow compared to fighters. But when you needed to match pace with a wounded airliner, slow was exactly what the situation required. 3 minutes later, Boomer spotted them. 2 F-16s flanking a Boeing 737 that was wallowing through the air like a drunk trying to walk a straight line. Even from 2 miles away, he could see the hydraulic fluid streaming from the wing, catching sunlight like a silver contrail. United 2847, this is Warthog 1. Understand you've got a hawk in the nest who needs some close air support. Consider me your wingman, ma'am. It's an honor. Major Martinez's voice came back, and Boomer felt like he was back in training again. That same calm authority that made you believe anything was possible. Warthog 1, this is Hawk. Your timing is perfect. Let's show these fighter jocks how slow and low gets the job done. One of the F-16 pilots, we heard that, Hawk. You were meant to. Boomer grinned despite the situation. Hawk hadn't lost her edge. All aircraft, this is Hawk. Major Martinez's voice took on the tone Boomer remembered from mission briefs, crisp, clear, leaving no room for confusion. Here's the plan. We're landing at Offutt's auxiliary runway in approximately 15 minutes. Weather window is tight, wind shear at low altitude, and we have minimal control authority. This will be a coordinated 4-aircraft operation. Questions so far? Silence. Every pilot was listening intently. Good. Viper, Stitch. You two maintain high cover. Keep all other air traffic clear within a 50-mile radius. Monitor our fuel state and be ready to relay communications if we lose radio. Viper, your mission commander for anything outside this immediate aircraft. Lisa Chen, copy Hawk, we've got your back. Warthog 1, you're my eyes. I need you positioned off our right side, low and slow, packing our descent. You'll provide real-time visual confirmation of our exterior condition, call out altitude, attitude, and approach angle. You're also my backup radio link to the tower. Roger that, ma'am. I'll be glued to your wing. Offutt Tower, are you on this frequency? A new voice, controlled and professional. Affirmative, Hawk. This is Colonel James Richter, Tower Commander. The auxiliary runway is cleared and foamed. Emergency equipment is in position. We're ready for you. Rachel paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of what she was about to say. Colonel, I need you to understand something. This aircraft has approximately 30% control authority. The landing gear may not lock properly. We're coming in hot with limited ability to flare. There's a significant chance we're going to hit hard, possibly lose the gear and slide. Your emergency crews need to be prepared for fire, for casualties, for everything. James Kowalski, the first officer, made a small sound beside her. Rachel put a hand on his shoulder without looking away from the instruments. Colonel Richter, understood, Hawk, we've handled worse. Have you handled a 737 with no hydraulics, sir? A pause, no. Then you haven't handled worse. But we're going to get through this together. I need you to trust me, Colonel. Can you do that? Major Martinez, I looked up your service record while you were talking. 3 distinguished flying crosses, 2 Purple Hearts, the Silver Star. You once landed an A-10 with 1 engine, no hydraulics, and 17 holes in your fuselage. If anyone can bring that bird down safe, it's you. This entire base is with you. Rachel felt something catch in her throat. Thank you, sir. Boomer positioned his A-10 alongside the 737, close enough to see faces in the windows. Passengers were pressed against the glass, watching the military aircraft surround them. Some were crying, others praying. A little boy waved at him and Boomer waggled his wings in response, a tiny gesture but one that said, "We're here. You're not alone." Hawk, I'm in position, Boomer reported. Running visual inspection now. He dropped lower, studying the 737's underside. What he saw made his stomach clench. Hawk nose gear appears down and locked. Port main gear is down, but the lock indicator is ambiguous. Could be locked, could be hanging loose. Starboard main gear. He moved closer, his A-10 almost directly beneath the 737's wing. Starboard main appears locked, but there's damage to the door mechanism. And Hawk, that hydraulic leak is worse than we thought. It's not just fluid. I'm seeing metal shards in the stream. Something internal has failed catastrophically. In the cockpit, Rachel absorbed this information. Beside her, James looked like he might be sick. Copy Boomer. So we're landing on gear that might collapse, with controls that barely work in wind shear conditions, with a narrow weather window. That's about the size of it, ma'am. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then, I've had worse odds. In combat, maybe. Combat training Tuesday afternoons. It's all flying, Boomer. The physics don't care about the circumstances. We have thrust. We have some control surfaces. We have the best pilots in the Air Force backing us up. And we have 11,500 feet of runway designed for aircraft heavier than this 737. The math works. We just have to execute. Lisa Chen's voice cut in. Hawk, you're approaching the descent point. Fuel state is getting critical. If we're doing this, we need to commit now. Rachel looked at the navigation display, at the runway marker still 40 miles away, at the fuel gauge showing 8,000 pounds remaining. Enough for one approach. One shot. No go-arounds. No second chances. She turned to James. First Officer Kowalski, I need you to understand something. When we start this approach, we're committed. We can't abort. We can't wave off. We land or we crash. Those are the only two outcomes. But I've been through this before, maybe not in a 737, but in situations just as bad. And I'm still here. Do you trust me? James looked at her, really looked at her. At the scars on her wrists, barely visible beneath her sleeves. At the gray in her hair, earned through combat and loss. At the eyes that had seen comrades die but had never stopped fighting to bring others home. I trust you, Major. Rachel nodded. Then she keyed the radio to all frequencies. Tower, fighters, the A-10, and the emergency channel that every pilot in the region could hear. All aircraft, this is Hawk. We are beginning our final approach. Off at Tower, confirm runway clear and all emergency equipment in position. Confirmed, Hawk. You are cleared to land. Godspeed. Rachel's hands moved to the yoke, covering James's. Together, they began to push forward. Viper Stitch moved to high cover. Warthog 1, you're with me. Let's bring this bird home. The Boeing 737, wounded and wallowing, began its descent toward Offutt Air Force Base. In the cabin, 145 passengers held their breath. And Major Rachel Hawk Martinez, who'd sworn she'd never fly again, prepared to land. The A-10 Thunderbolt II moved into position like a guardian angel made of titanium and firepower. Boomer Sullivan had flown close air support missions over Syria, had threaded between mountains in Afghanistan, had put 30 rounds through moving vehicles from 2 miles away. But he'd never done anything like this, packing a dying commercial airliner at 180 knots, close enough to see the rivets on its fuselage, matching its descent foot for foot. The Warthog was designed for this kind of flying. While F-16s and F-22s were built for speed and altitude, the A-10 was built for the dirt, slow, low, and close to the troops it protected. Today, those troops were 147 civilians in a metal tube that was barely staying airborne. Hawk, I'm positioned off your starboard side, 100 feet lateral separation, Boomer reported, his eyes scanning every inch of the 737. I have visual on all control surfaces. I'm your eyes now, ma'am. Through the 737's cockpit window, Rachel could see the A-10's distinctive profile. The high-mounted engines designed to avoid ground fire, the straight wings that gave it incredible maneuverability at low speeds, the nose that looked like a shark's mouth painted around the massive cannon. She'd flown that aircraft 522 times into combat. Today, it might save her life. Good to have you, Boomer, just like old times. Except you're in a bus and I'm the one doing the flying, ma'am. Life's funny that way. Despite everything, Rachel smiled. Status check, how do we look? Boomer dropped his A-10 slightly lower, positioning himself beneath the 737's fuselage. His practiced eyes scanned the damage. Hydraulic leak is constant but not worsening. Your flaps are frozen at 15 degrees, not ideal but workable. Landing gear is down, but I'm still not confident about those locks. Your portside main gear strut looks like it's under stress. Could be damage to the actuator. In the cockpit, James's face went pale. If that gear collapses on landing. Then we'll deal with it, Rachel interrupted calmly. One problem at a time, James. Right now, our problem is getting this approach right. Boomer, I need altitude calls every 100 feet starting at 2,000. Copy that. And Hawk, your right aileron is moving more than your left. You'll need to compensate with rudder on approach. Rachel felt the controls, nodding the asymmetry. Without hydraulics, the control surfaces were moving through a manual backup system that was never designed to land an aircraft. It was supposed to be a get-you-home-alive system, not a precision approach tool. Noted, Offutt Tower weather update. Colonel Richter's voice came back. Wind currently 280 degrees at 25 knots, gusting to 38. Wind shear advisory remains in effect below 1,000 feet. Hawk, the window is closing. You've got maybe 15 minutes of acceptable conditions. 15 minutes. They were 12 minutes from the runway. Rachel keyed the intercom to the cabin. Flight attendants, this is Major Martinez in the cockpit. Prepare the cabin for emergency landing. I need everyone in brace positions in 5 minutes. Remove all sharp objects, secure all loose items, review evacuation procedures with passengers. We're going to hit hard, but we're going to make it. Do your jobs and we'll do ours. In the cabin, Jessica the flight attendant grabbed the PA microphone, her hand shaking only slightly. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our final approach. In a few minutes, I will instruct you to assume brace positions. Please listen carefully to the following instructions. The mother with the toddler was crying silently, holding her child close. The businessman in 12B had his eyes closed, lips moving in prayer. The teenager who'd asked if Rachel would save them was staring out the window at the A-10, at the U.S. Air Force insignia on its tail, and for the first time in an hour, he believed they might actually survive. Beginning descent, Rachel announced. Target altitude 1,500 feet, then we level off for final approach vector. She and James pushed the yoke forward together. The 737's nose dropped. The altimeter began unwinding. 18,000 feet. 17,000. 16,000. Rate of descent looks good, Hawk, Boomer called. Holding 1,200 feet per minute. Attitude is stable. Above them, the two F-16s orbited at 5,000 feet, Lisa Chen and Marcus Webb watching the drama unfold below. Lisa's hands were white-knuckled on her stick. This was Sarah's mentor down there. The woman who'd taught her sister to fly, who'd led her into combat, who'd watched her die. Don't you dare crash, Hawk, Lisa thought. Don't you dare make me lose both of you. Viper, you still with us? Rachel's voice cut through Lisa's thoughts. Every foot of the way, Hawk. Good, because I'm going to need you to do something for me when this is over. Name it. Tell me about Sarah. Tell me about the sister I never got to know outside of the cockpit. Lisa's throat tightened. Deal, but first you land that aircraft. Working on it. 12,000 feet. 10,000. 8,000. The Kansas prairie spread below them, flat and brown, dotted with farms and roads that looked like veins from this altitude. Ahead, the city of Omaha appeared on the horizon, and just south of it, Offutt Air Force Base. Home plate. Offutt Tower, we have the field in sight, Rachel reported. Roger, Hawk, you are cleared for straighten approach, runway 30 auxiliary. Wind now 290 at 30, gusting 42. All traffic is clear. The sky is yours. 5,000 feet. 4,000. Boomer, talk to me. How's our profile? The A-10 stayed glued to their wing, Boomer's eyes constantly scanning. You're slightly right of centerline. Correct 2 degrees left. Your descent rate is good, but you're going to need to reduce power soon or you'll come in too fast. Rachel glanced at the airspeed indicator. 210 knots. They needed to be at 180 for final approach, but slower meant less control authority. It was a razor's edge. Too fast and they'd overshoot the runway, too slow and the aircraft would become unflyable. James, pull power back to 70%. 70%. James's hands moved to the throttles. The engine noise decreased. The aircraft slowed. 3,000 feet. 2,500. Hawk, you're at 2,000 feet, Boomer called. Runway is 12 miles ahead. You're lined up on profile, looking good. Copy. Gear status. Nose gear solid, starboard main solid, port main still questionable. I'm seeing movement in the strut that worries me. Rachel made a decision. If it collapses, it collapses. We can't retract it and we can't fix it. We fly the approach we've got. Understood? Understood, ma'am. 1,900 feet. 1,800. 1,700. The runway appeared in the windscreen, a long gray strip foamed white, lined with emergency vehicles. Rachel could see them clearly now. Fire trucks, ambulances, crash recovery equipment, all waiting for one of two outcomes. Flight attendants, prepare the cabin. Brace positions now. Jessica's voice came over the PA. Everyone assume brace positions. Heads down, hands locked behind your neck. Brace, brace, brace. In the cabin, passengers bent forward. The mother wrapped herself around her toddler. The businessman gripped the seat in front of him. The teenage boy grabbed his father's hand. 1,500 feet. 1,400. Hawk, watch your altitude. Boomer's voice was urgent. You're descending too fast, wind shear's getting you. Rachel felt it, the sudden drop as they hit a wind shear layer. The nose pitched down. The altimeter unwound rapidly. 1,300. 1,200. 1,100. James, full power now. James slammed the throttles forward. The engines roared to life, fighting the wind shear. The descent slowed, then stopped. They leveled off at 1,000 feet. Too low, they were too low. Hawk, you're under glide slope. Colonel Richter's voice was tense. You need to climb. But climbing meant using power they'd need for the landing. Rachel made a split-second calculation. Negative, we're staying here. We'll make the runway. Boomer, distance. 8 miles. You're low, but you can stretch it if you hold this altitude. Then that's what we'll do. 900 feet. 850. They were practically skimming over houses now. People on the ground looked up, saw the wounded 737 with military escort, understood that something extraordinary was happening above them. 6 miles, Boomer called. Altitude good, heading good. You're threading the needle, Hawk. Rachel's hands were welded to the yoke, feeling every tremor, every response, becoming one with the aircraft the way she had with her A-10. Come on, girl. Stay with me. Just a little longer. 4 miles. Speed 180 knots. You're perfect. The runway filled the windscreen now. Rachel could see individual foam patterns, see firefighters in silver suits standing by their trucks, see the skid marks from 1,000 previous landings. 2 miles, final approach. This is it, Hawk. Rachel took a breath. Beside her, James's hands tightened on the yoke with hers. Behind them in the cabin, 145 passengers held their breath. Above them, Lisa Chen whispered a prayer for her sister's mentor. And Boomer Sullivan, in his beloved Warthog, stayed exactly where he needed to be. 1 mile, start your flare in 3, 2, 1. The runway rushed up to meet them. The last mile took forever and no time at all. Rachel's world narrowed to a tunnel of absolute focus. Everything outside the cockpit ceased to exist. No past, no future. No Sarah Chen dying in an explosion 8 months ago. Only this moment. Only these instruments. Only the runway growing larger in the windscreen. Altitude 500 feet. Boomer's voice was steady in her headset. Airspeed 175 knots. You're slightly right of centerline. Correct 1 degree left. Rachel nudged the yoke. The 737 responded sluggishly, the damaged hydraulics fighting her every command. 400 feet. Centerline good. Rate of descent 800 feet per minute. That's high, Hawk. You need to shallow out. Can't. Rachel's voice was clipped, conserved. Less descent rate means more distance. We'll run out of runway. Then this is going to be sporty. Story of my life. In the cabin, passengers were locked in brace position. The mother squeezed her toddler tighter, whispering, "I love you, I love you, I love you," like a mantra. The businessman's prayer had become wordless, just pleading. The teenage boy's father gripped his son's hand so hard both their knuckles were white. Jessica, the flight attendant, strapped into her jump seat, stared at the emergency exit door and rehearsed the evacuation procedures in her mind. Door. Handle. Pull. Slide. Get them out. Get everyone out. 300 feet. Boomer's A-10 was now alongside but slightly higher, giving him a perfect view of the approach. Wind is gusting. Watch for shear. Your left wing is dropping. Rachel felt it, a sudden gust catching the port wing. She jammed the yoke right, compensating. The aircraft wallowed but held. Sweat ran down her temple. 250 feet. You're low on the glide slope. If you don't climb, you'll hit before the runway. I see it. Rachel's eyes were locked on the approach lights, counting them down. James, 10 degrees more throttle. James's hand moved. The engine surged. The nose lifted slightly. 200 feet. Better. You're going to make the threshold. Get ready to reduce power. The runway threshold, the beginning of the landing zone, rushed toward them at 175 knots, nearly 200 miles per hour. In a normal landing, they'd be at 140. 150 feet, crossing the fence. Cut power to idle now. Rachel and James pulled the throttles back together. The engines wound down. The 737 dropped like a stone. 100 feet, flare, flare. Rachel hauled back on the yoke with everything she had. Her arms screamed. James added his strength to hers. Together they pulled. The nose came up, slowly, too slowly. 75 feet, flare more. The yoke was at the stops. They had no more. 50 feet, this is it. On the ground, firefighters braced themselves. Colonel Richter stood in the tower, one hand over his mouth. Above, Lisa Chen couldn't watch but couldn't look away. 30 feet, main gear is going to hit first. Brace for impact. The main landing gear, 2 sets of wheels on either side of the fuselage, touched down. For one beautiful second it was perfect. Rubber met concrete with a screech. Foam exploded in white plumes. The aircraft settled, weight transferring from wings to wheels. Then the port main gear collapsed. The left side of the aircraft dropped 3 feet in an instant. The wing hit the runway with a sound like the world ending, a shriek of metal on concrete that drowned out everything else. Sparks erupted in a brilliant cascade, a river of orange and white streaming behind the wing. Rachel felt the impact through her bones. The yoke tried to rip itself from her hands. Fight it, keep it straight. The aircraft slewed left, pulled by the dragging wing. They were sliding now, 3 wheels and 1 wing, surfing on foam at 150 miles per hour. The nose gear was still off the ground. Deploy emergency brakes. James's hand slammed the emergency brake lever. The right side brakes locked. The tires screamed, then exploded one by one. Bang, 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 each one a rifle shot. The aircraft spun, 10 degrees off centerline, 15, 20. Rudder, right rudder. Rachel stood on the right pedal with all her weight, trying to force the nose back straight. The dragging wing was pulling them in circles. Boomer's A-10 pulled up in a way, unable to help, unable to watch. "Come on, Hawk. Come on, come on, come on." In the cabin, passengers screamed as the world tilted. Oxygen masks swung wildly. Overhead bins burst open, spilling bags. The teenager's father wrapped his arms around his son, becoming a human shield. The wing was disintegrating. Chunks of metal tore away, tumbling across the runway. The wing flaps separated completely, cartwheeling into the grass. Fuel vented from the ruptured tank but didn't ignite, the foam suppressing any spark. Rachel's arms were on fire. Every muscle trembled, but she didn't let go, didn't ease up. The rudder pedal stayed mashed to the floor. Slowly, impossibly slowly, the nose began to straighten. 20 degrees off centerline. 15. 10. "You're getting it," Boomer was shouting now. "You're getting it back." The nose wheel touched down. With all 3 points of contact, even with one collapsed, Rachel had more control. The emergency brakes on the right side bit harder. The deceleration was brutal, violent. 9,000 feet of runway behind them. 10,000. 10,500. They were running out of concrete. The end of the runway appeared through the windscreen. Beyond it, grass, then a drainage ditch, then nothing. "Come on." Rachel wasn't sure if she was shouting or praying. 11,000 feet. 11,200. The foam was doing its job, reducing friction, helping them slide rather than tumble. But they were still moving too fast. 11,400 feet. The end of runway marker flashed past. 100 feet of runway left. 75. 50. Rachel closed her eyes. The aircraft stopped. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The only sound was the wind whistling through shattered metal and the hiss of foam settling. Then James Kowalski's voice, small and wondering, We're on the ground." Rachel opened her eyes. Through the windscreen, she could see emergency vehicles already racing toward them, foam trucks and ambulances and fire crews. They'd stopped with maybe 20 feet to spare. She keyed the radio. Her voice was hoarse, shaking, but clear. "Offutt Tower, United 2847 is on the ground. All souls safe. I repeat, all souls safe." The radio exploded. Cheers from the tower, from the F-16s overhead, from Boomer in his A-10, who was whooping so loud he forgot to release the transmit button. In the cabin, passengers realized they were alive. The teenage boy started laughing, hysterical, relieved laughter. His father was crying. The mother kissed her toddler's head over and over. The businessman just sat there, stunned, staring at his hands. Jessica unbuckled and grabbed the PA. "Evacuate, evacuate. Release your seatbelts and move to the exits. Leave everything behind." The doors blew open. Emergency slides deployed with a hiss. Passengers poured out, sliding down into the arms of waiting firefighters. In the cockpit, Rachel's hands were still locked on the yoke. She couldn't let go. Her muscles had forgotten how. "Major," James's voice was gentle. "We did it. You can let go now." Slowly, painfully, Rachel uncurled her fingers. James wrapped her in a sudden, fierce hug. "You saved us. You saved everyone." Through the side window, Rachel saw the A-10 perform a victory roll, completely unauthorized, absolutely beautiful. Boomer's voice came through. "That's how it's done, ladies and gentlemen. H-O-O-ra." Above, Lisa Chen's F-16 waggled its wings. Rachel keyed the radio one more time. "Viper, we need to talk about your sister." "I know, but first," Lisa's voice was thick with emotion. "First, get out of that aircraft. There are 145 people who want to thank you." Rachel looked at the scene outside. Passengers on their knees kissing the ground. Firefighters helping the elderly. The mother holding her toddler up to see the hero planes. Emergency crews swarming the wreckage. 147 souls, all safe, all alive. She'd done it, she'd flown again. And this time, nobody died. Rachel's legs almost gave out when she stepped onto the runway. She'd flown combat missions for 18 years, survived being shot at by surface-to-air missiles, landed damaged aircraft more times than she could count. But stepping out of that 737 cockpit, feeling solid ground beneath her feet, seeing 147 people alive because she'd chosen to fly one more time, her knees buckled. James Kowalski caught her. "Whoa, I've got you, Major." Around them, chaos and joy intermingled. Emergency slides were still inflated, passengers streaming down them into a sea of firefighters and paramedics. But these weren't victims being rescued. They were survivors celebrating miracles. The mother with the toddler reached Rachel first, tears streaming down her face. She didn't say anything, just grabbed Rachel's hand and pressed it to her heart. Her little girl, maybe 3 years old, looked up at Rachel with wide eyes and said, "Are you the airplane angel?" Rachel knelt down, her own vision blurring. "No, sweetie, I'm just a pilot." "My mommy says you saved us." Rachel glanced at the mother, who nodded through her tears. "You gave me more time with my daughter. How do I ever thank you for that?" Before Rachel could answer, more passengers surrounded her. The businessman from 12B, still clutching his phone with the screensaver of his kids. The teenager who'd asked if she would save them, now grinning like he'd just met a superhero. The elderly man who'd been praying in Spanish, crossing himself and kissing her hand. "Please," Rachel's voice cracked. "I just did what any pilot would." "No." Jessica, the flight attendant, appeared, her uniform torn but her eyes bright. "Any pilot would have stayed in their seat, hoping someone else would handle it. You stood up. You walked into that cockpit when you didn't have to. That's not just any pilot, that's a hero." A roar overhead made everyone look up. Boomer's A-10 made another pass, lower this time, a final salute, before banking toward the main runway to land. Moments later, 2 F-16s followed, their sleek forms cutting through the Kansas sky. Rachel extracted herself from the grateful crowd and walked toward the main hangar, her body moving on autopilot. She needed to see them. The pilots, her wingmen, the ones who'd made this impossible landing possible. Boomer reached her first. He'd run from his parked A-10, still wearing his flight gear, helmet under his arm. When he saw Rachel, he stopped, came to attention, and saluted. "Captain Sullivan, that's not Nessus." "Major Martinez." His voice was formal, but his eyes were wet. "It has been the greatest honor of my life to be your wingman today. Thank you for teaching me how to fly. Thank you for showing me what it means to be a pilot." Then he dropped the salute and hugged her, lifting her off the ground. "Holy hell, ma'am. That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. The way you controlled that bird with basically no controls. I'm never going to top that story." Rachel laughed, actually laughed for the first time in 8 months. "You kept me alive up there, Boomer. Your eyes, your calls, your steady voice. We did this together." "Until the wheels touched down, ma'am." "Until the wheels touched down." She saw them then, walking across the tarmac. 2 F-16 pilots in flight suits, helmets under their arms. Lieutenant Marcus Webb hung back respectfully, but Captain Lisa Chen walked forward with the purposeful stride of someone who'd been waiting 8 months for this moment. Rachel's heart hammered. This was it. The reckoning. The moment when Sarah's sister would demand to know why Rachel lived when Sarah didn't. Lisa stopped 3 feet away. For a long moment, the two women just stared at each other, one who'd lost a sister, one who'd lost a student and friend. "I need to know." Lisa's voice was controlled but barely. "I need to know what happened that day." Rachel nodded. She owed Lisa this, owed Sarah this. "We were providing close air support for a ground operation in Helmand Province, high-value target in a fortified compound. Sarah, Lieutenant Chen, was my wingman. We made our approach, and I was lining up for the gun run when the SAM launch warning went off." Rachel's voice caught, but she forced herself to continue. "The missile was tracking me. Sarah called it out, told me to brake left. I did, but she maneuvered to draw the missile away from me. She put herself between me and that Sam. Did she know? Lisa's voice was a whisper. Did she know it would? Yes, Rachel's tears finally came. She knew. Her last transmission, the one not in the official report, I heard it. She said, "Hawk, get out of here, save yourself, keep flying, keep saving people, that's your gift." Rachel's voice broke completely. But I couldn't keep flying, I couldn't save anyone, not after losing her. I quit, walked away, until today. Lisa was crying now too. She reached into her flight suit pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn, read many times. "This is the last letter Sarah sent me. She wrote it the night before that mission." Rachel took it with shaking hands. The handwriting was Sarah's, neat, precise. "Lisa, if you're reading this, something went wrong. But I need you to know I chose this. I chose to fly with Hawk because she's the best. She taught me that being a pilot isn't about the aircraft or the missions, it's about the lives you save. If I die, it won't be her fault. It'll be because I made the same choice she's made 100 times. Protect your wingman, no matter what. And if you ever meet Hawk after I'm gone, tell her she's not allowed to quit. Tell her the sky needs her. Tell her I said, keep flying, keep saving people." Rachel couldn't see through her tears. "I didn't keep flying, I failed her." "No," Lisa grabbed Rachel's shoulders. "You stopped flying, past tense. Today you flew again. Today you saved 147 lives. You honored Sarah's memory more than any medal or memorial ever could." They collapsed into each other, 8 months of grief and guilt, and survival pouring out on that runway. "I'm sorry," Rachel sobbed. "I'm so sorry I couldn't save her." "You saved me," Lisa whispered back. "By landing that plane, by being exactly who Sarah believed you were, you saved me from losing faith. My sister died believing you'd keep making a difference. Today, you proved her right." 6 months later, the Pentagon, Washington, D.C. The ceremony was packed. Senators, generals, press from every major outlet. But Rachel only saw the faces that mattered. James Kowalski, now enrolled in her aerospace emergency training program. Boomer Sullivan, grinning in his dress uniform. Lisa Chen and Marcus Webb, both promoted for their role in the rescue. And 147 former passengers, many who'd flown across the country to be there. The Secretary of Defense read the citation. "For extraordinary heroism and voluntary risk of life above and beyond the call of duty." When the Airman's Medal was pinned to her uniform, Rachel looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "This one's for you, Sarah." Outside, an A-10 Thunderbolt II performed a flyover, followed by 2 F-16s in missing man formation. A reporter cornered Rachel afterward. "Major Martinez, what made you step up when you'd sworn you'd never fly again?" Rachel thought about fear and courage, about loss and redemption, about 147 people who'd been strangers and were now family. "I'm a pilot," she said simply. "That's who I am. Whether I'm in uniform or seat 12A, whether I'm in an A-10 or a 737, when pilots call for help, when F-16s cry out and the Warthog thunders in, there's only one answer. Which is, until the wheels touch down." 1 year later, the Rachel Martinez Aerospace Emergency Response Center opened at Offutt Air Force Base. On the tarmac outside sat an A-10 Thunderbolt II, permanently displayed with a plaque. "In honor of Lieutenant Sarah Chen and all pilots who give everything to protect others. Some fly fighters, some fly Warthogs, some fly commercial jets. All are heroes when they choose courage over fear." Rachel stood in her flight suit. She'd accepted a reserve position, training the next generation. A young cadet approached nervously. "Major Martinez, is it true you once saved 147 people?" Rachel smiled. "I had help, I had wingmen, that's the secret, we never fly alone." Above them, an A-10 roared past in tribute, and for just a moment, Rachel heard Sarah's voice on the wind. "Keep flying, Hawk." Rachel looked at the cadet. "Come on, let's get you in the cockpit. Time to learn what it really means to fly." As they walked toward the waiting aircraft, the sun broke through the clouds, and Major Rachel Hawk Martinez knew she was finally home. She'd sat quietly on a plane until heroes needed help. Then she'd reminded the world, once a pilot, always a pilot. Until the wheels touched down. The end.